when in doubt, push it back in. All right. Brother Rodney was here last week, and he kind of brought up some things that I didn't necessarily think of. And later on when he had talked to me, he said, what he said to me was about talking to kids by going back to the Word. And he said, he goes, oh, I wasn't a word of correction. I was like, no, because it makes sense, because I don't do that a lot of it. It was all because I said so. That's where that whole subject came up with Brother Rodney, is because I said so. If I'm talking to one of my kids about cleaning their room, there's no chapter and verse per se, clean your room. Honor thy mother and father. Obey your parents. So little things like that, after you had talked to me about that, it kind of made sense with what he's saying, is because I don't do that a lot. I don't go. Once in a while, we'll put a chapter and verse up on top of the refrigerator for something that we've been dealing with or talking about. Or it's funny, the word that Sam got from Brother Rodney was the very poster that he has in his room is, I can do all things through Christ. Kelly and I say that to him all the time. Sam's first response is, I can't. And that does not come from me. Because I'm like, a challenge accepted. I'm going to do it. I'll figure out a way to do it. Kelly's a little bit more on the hesitant side. But Sam is just not a, let's call it that. So it's a little bit different. So he has to be really, really coaxed. Strongly encouraged. Kind of sounds like a lot of Christians nowadays. In my observation, do you think there is a lot more people in 2017 that step out in the absolute faith of God, stepping out on nothing and finding something there in 2017? Or do you think there's more people back in the 50s and 60s that stepped out on faith and found something that they were stepping out on? Could that be a culture thing? I do think we do a lot more things on our own and hope that God's in it. And I think that, yes, Brother Bud.
I think it's a distraction thing. I think back in the decades past, when there were fewer distractions, there were probably more chores and more things to do, but I also do believe that there was a generation there that not only buried themselves in the Word, but it was closer to a time of God's generals and the manifestations of
God's generals,
miraculous things going on. Today, I think we're just consumed with every alternate thought that comes down the road, every distraction, every place to go.
Yeah,
and so I don't know that I see the seeking outside of a crisis situation so much. You know what I mean?
Yep. I think you're right, and I think it really does have a lot to do with, first and foremost, distractions. There is an app for everything. I don't even study on my tablet anymore because all of a sudden you get a ring over here, you get a ring over there. I find myself having to just kind of like, putting those harness on and say, okay, somehow, some way, I'll go out in my truck and on my brakes, and I'll put the seat back, and once in a while I'll turn the radio on or something like that. After that, I'm just kind of like putting my head back and just no sound, no noise, no nothing, and just kind of, just chill. 15 minutes, and it's almost like a power nap, and you go right back in, and you get right back into it. So we left off on right around the ballpark of chapter 29, verse 11-ish. Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end. Who is the wise? If we're to be the wise, although there's a lot of Christians that can be in full rage too. A fool gives full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end. Verse 12, if a ruler listens to lies, all his officials become wicked. And I remember touching on this just a little bit, about rulers, about how things work as far as a king. There's always a council. There's always a council.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. You're, yeah. Yes, it is. That's a good distraction. That's right. That's right. Welcome, Brother Harvey and Sister Sally. Very nice to see you. And apparently somebody missed you. Somebody missed you, Brother Harvey, I think. Steve is not going to let you go now. All right. If a ruler listens to lies, all his officials become wicked. The poor and the oppressor have this in common: the Lord gives sight to the eyes of both. There's a lot of rumors that if you look at a lot of the heavy metal bands, I remember growing up listening to Ozzy Osbourne and all these people like this. If they do a documentary on them, they have roots in church. Yeah. They have roots in, a lot of them do. You're biting the head of a bat off in the middle of your thing and drinking blood. And it's like, this guy used to be in the praise and worship band, and not, altar boy, but in a church that played in music and some sort like that. If you look at documentaries, they really had stuff like that. So did something like, I'm going to say multiple choices weren't right. Because I can make one wrong choice and I'll pay for it, but I think there's more than one bad choice along the way. So you look at rulers. How about just the ruling of ourselves? How about starting with this king? How about starting with this priest? If we've all been called to kings and priests. Well, how about starting with this priest, that a ruler here listens to lies? What would it do to everything below me? So when you have rulers in the Old Testament, all of those young, going to be kings, even when they were kings, always had a council all around them. If the ruler king didn't confide with the council and made a decision that was not out of haste, out of anger, out of rage, out of whatever, the consequences throughout the kingdom would be not good. How about the counselors that's been in place under the king? So we're always talking about the king being this is who's in charge, but how about the counselors that are around them that have wisdom to influence, first of all, and hopefully, and encourage and not alter, but what's the word I'm looking for when you're trying to, counsel with somebody and giving them the ramifications of, if you do this, this is going to happen. Cause of law and effect. All that stuff comes into play. If you make this rule, this is how it's going to be. How's it going to affect the rest of the kingdom? How's it going to affect the rest of the people that are under you? A king judges the poor with fairness. I want to go back to 13. The poor and the oppressor have this in common. The Lord gives sight to both of them. So I was talking about heavy metal bands and where they've gotten off track and left the church or whatever, and all of a sudden they're doing all of this stuff that you look back now, it's like Alice Cooper's another one. There was supposed to be roots in his lifetime that he was tied to a church. So the Lord gives sight to the eyes of both. The same blood that was shed on the cross, regardless of the extent of the sin, you still need the same amount of blood. We all know that. If you look at what the outright sin, demonic-wise, blatant, hypocrisy against the kingdom, all this stuff like that, and God gives sight to both the godly and the ungodly. The Bible says that he reigns on the just and the unjust. I don't know about you, but I've said a few times, why or how can he be like that and still be part of the kingdom or came from church, or how could you let yourself go that far? So we'll always have those people in our lives and in the news and all this other stuff that we're always going to be able to look at and say, man, God, why are you letting this happen? Why is this happening? Why'd you let this happen to this person? Why'd you let this happen to that person? So we're talking about with Brother Rodney about because I said so. So I'm teaching Sam how to drive now. So, yeah, there's no room for questioning while you're actually driving and turning around the corner. Put your blinker on, watch out for the curb as you're going around the corner this way here. So if I would have said something, that's not the time to question me. Well, why do I have to do that? Go around the corner before you hit the car. That's why. Because I told you so. See where that part comes in? That works because I said so. I said to Sam, I says, no matter what, there's no radio when we're driving. Just Sam and I are driving. There's no radio. I put my cell phone down, and he's driving. So I'm aware of everything that's going around. I said, so now you also have to be aware of what's going on around you. I said, because if I'm looking straight and I don't see what's on your side over there, just because I don't say don't hit the brake and you see something coming, it's your own judgment to step on the brake. Common sense, right? Because I said so. So the other day when we were leaving, and I think he was nervous because we were driving at night, there was a little bit more like I would say something, yeah, I know. And then we'd get to something else, and yeah, I know. Okay, Sam, but you didn't do it. Yeah, I did. No, you didn't. So he's arguing with me, and I didn't want to start a fight with him right then and there, but I said to him, I said, when you come up to that light, light's going to turn green. And I always tell him, as you're going through slowly, just take a quick peek right or left, make sure nobody else is trying to get through that last red light as they're coming through. We all say, oh yeah. Sam's like, yeah, I know. I said, okay. I said, as you're going through, just make sure you turn left and then right and then go. Okay. Light turns green. And I looked at him I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, there's nothing coming. I was like, no. I told you to turn left. I'm sorry, you were going straight. I told you to look left and look right and then go straight. You only turned right and kept going. You didn't even look left. Yeah, I did. No, you didn't. I'm looking right at you. No, you didn't. I said, so you're saying you did? Yeah. So all of a sudden, this is where the rulers come in. This is where the rulers come in, where I'm talking about if we say something, there has to be a definitive word going forth because I said so. Okay? There's no chapter and verse for turning left and turning right. It's in that moment. It's because I said so. It's for your safety. How's that for the church? It's for your safety. This is the way we're going. Don't turn right, don't turn left. We're going straight. It's for your safety. We all want to stay on the boat. We all want to stay in the bus. The bus is going to stop. We know people are getting on, getting off. We understand that. But the purpose is still, we're going forward. We want everybody to stay on the boat. We want everybody on the same page. So he's learning that part of him. Verse 14, if a king judges the poor with fairness, his throne will be established forever. For every good king in the Old Testament, there was a bad king in the Old Testament. And you can look back, and statistically I could not go back and say, gee, there was 27 of these and 27 good ones and 27 bad ones. However the ratio was, there was always something good from every bad king that was in there. Was it Rehoboam, and what was the other one? Jeroboam? Jeroboam. So you got two kings right there. So all of the counselors around them influenced them. That's the word I was looking for before. Influenced them into making right decisions and what's in the best interest of your rulership in your kingdom. Danny used to work, his first boss, Kenny, was hard. I only worked with him a few years, and when he kind of popped in at the end, he was hard. Because even when I was working with him, and the tail end of it, when he was not there too often, it was a very abrupt, this is what you do, go do it. That was it. There was no other further instructions, kind of thing like that. So if you had a question, it was, if he told you it already, he's going to let you know, I already said that to you. So there was no, not compassion, but there was no, not sympathy. There was no, let's call it sympathy. I told you that. There was, I'm not going to tell you it again. Nowadays, I find talking to my kids, I told you once already, doesn't work. I don't, because we're verse 14, verse 15, we're talking about the rod and reprimand impart wisdom. So that's where we're going with that. Gabe, once I get to that third time, he knows there will not be a fourth. We'll do that. That's one. That's two. And then the third time, consequences. Sam, and this is my fault, because I don't want to be like the way my dad was. If he had to say it 1.5, I was toast. It was one time he said it to me. If there was even a breath of a second time having to say it to me, I was done. In the corner, kneeling, belt, whatever it was, whatever was closest by to him, that's what it was. It was 1 and not even a half, and I was in trouble. So I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be the way where I have no patience, especially when dealing with my kids and disciplining my kids. But I want to have that same kind of patience when I'm encouraging my kids and when I'm talking to my kids. Just about, especially about the things of the kingdom. We started talking the same about tithing. Well, just because we do it doesn't mean he's going to do it. So now we started talking about principles about tithing. We're still talking about rulers now. So when the ruler doesn't listen to lies and does the right thing, everything that comes out of him and comes from him should be influenced by purity and influenced in the right direction. There's no bad influence or bad intents coming out of the king so that it gets filtered through the kingdom. So if we're talking about the same principle, when I talked to Sam and Gabe about tithing and about being kind, Gabe is a little bit more compassionate than Sam is. Sam is a little bit more sympathetic and sensitive in other areas that Gabe's not. Kelly and I talk about, we look at how ridiculously opposite these two are. I'm hearing a lot of that, and I do believe that. And I want my own kids to have their own person. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Anyways. I where's Abby? We had Abby for a little while, but she's on her own now.
That's because
She's
Stephen thought he was the end.
all right. Gabriel. If you ask the pastor that, yes, he has his moments. Lucifer was an angel too. Anyways, he has been inducted into the Junior National Honor Society. And I've always been proud of my kids, regardless of what they were. And to see him go through the induction and go through that whole thing, put his right hand up, pledge to be upright, do the right thing, find ways to help people, and go through the whole ceremony itself was very, very proud. And that's where we were last week. And it was very nice ceremony. And to see him thrive in the academic area is beyond Callie and I's, first of all, understanding, because we simple. It's a proud moment to see him do something like that. So now being in the Junior National Honor Society is an absolute blessing for both of us to see him like that. Because one of the scriptures we're going to read, verse 15, the rod and reprimand impart wisdom, but a child left undisciplined disgraces his mother. Reprimand, and I think the King James used the word reproof. And reproof means the act of reproofing or rebuking. And censuring. And I looked at the word censuring, it said, strong expression of disapproval. I am not disapproved with either one of my boys. The rod has been used. And I think because of it, they've learned to stay within the boundaries and the confines of what the guidelines of our house is. The rod imparts wisdom. Imparting wisdom is one thing. Receiving wisdom is another. Accepting wisdom from somebody else is a whole nother ballpark. As a parent, I'm imparting wisdom because it's what I'm saying to him to do. As you get older, receiving that wisdom and doing something with the wisdom is another. My dad taught me how to work with my hands. I can build a house. I can build a shed. You get me underneath the hood of a car, I'm lost. You get me under the sink with plumbing, forget it, I'm lost. Electrical, get Stephen or Stephen. There's certain things that I'm good at, jack of all trades, master of none, that's me. I'm a master of none of them. I can fiddle my way through it, but that's about it. So when my dad taught me how to do this and to do this, one of my first jobs, him and I started a business doing vinyl siding. I had just finished building this house with this carpenter, and they were looking to do the siding. They were starting another house and said, hey, let's find somebody to do the siding. So I was like, hey, my dad does siding. He goes, oh, you want to do it with him? Absolutely. Okay. I went to my dad, got all the materials that we're going to do. He showed up on the job, six-pack in his cooler, and he was ready to go. I was like, hold on, Dad. You can't do that. He goes, well, that's how I work. I was like, you can't do that here. This is not your job. We're under this guy over here. We can't do that. He goes, well, that's how I've always done it. I was like, you can't do it that way no more. Well, let's get through this job then. So he'd go sit in the car every once in a while, and we're doing the job. And the boss had lined 3 other houses up for us to do after that. And I told him he couldn't do it. He goes, wow, you guys did such a great job. I says, I can't do this. I can't work. And I went to my dad and I said, we can't do them. If you can tell me you can do them without bringing your 6-pack of beer to the job site, we'll line up the work. He goes, well, I'm not going to do that. So he forego thousands of dollars worth of work ahead of us because of what his pattern and habit was. His father was the same way. So when I talk about the rod, there's a certain amount of wisdom that can be imparted, but you can't impart, I guess you can. Work ethic is learned. If my kids never see me working hard, how will they ever learn how to work hard? One of my downfalls is when I study, I'm at work, my kids are in school. That's when I study. That's when I have my Bible, I go in my truck and I sit down and read, write down my notes. When I come home, we'll talk about things. But there's not, for me, in my home, me studying for Sunday school in my home. Is that a fault? Could it be changed? For me, I do what works for me in my situation with my availability. Do I fit the gospel in? No, that's not what I'm saying. But do I find it more convenient to sit in my car with no distractions to study so I can hear what God wants to say? Yes. My kids read their Bible in the morning, they read in the afternoon. They got a couple of things that they do. So we're still talking about the rod, and we're still talking about imparting wisdom. Teach your child the way that they should go so that when they're older, they won't depart from the way. So when they're older, wisdom does not happen overnight. Gray hair does not happen overnight. Wisdom doesn't happen overnight. And it really is, sometimes you wonder, man, I wish you would just get this. How many times have I see Pastor's got the mic. How many times have we seen somebody that you know they're on the wrong path and all of a sudden something drastic has to happen to them in order to get their attention, like, almost lose their life. My nephew, I brought him a couple of times. He just got into this really bad accident the other day. Kelly says to me, she goes, I wonder if that's what's going to get his attention. I was like, I don't know. I guess if he calls me up, we'll see. But how do you impart wisdom? Go ahead, Pastor.
The word for rod, I think one of the issues we struggle with is the English. The minute we read rod, we think it's beating the snot out of them. So, and it can. You have to look at all the real meanings of the word Sheba in the Hebrew, and it means a staff, a stick, but it has principles that go along with it, and it can be used as one for. We hear about the story about in some cultures they cane children, and the rod can be used. That word Sheba can be used there, but to me the primary meaning in the scriptures means branch. And the thought is this: if you use the rod, it causes who you are to branch off into what you're dealing with.
That's good, but that's scary too. Think about that.
That is the principle here. The principle is, if you use the rod, it means authority. It means a lot of things. It has a lot of meanings. Sometimes we're better off we don't just use Strong's, if we go to some of the other BBD or the Thayer or one of the other ones and take a look at more of that. And that's what it really means. The principle is, over and over again in the scriptures, that the Lord is bringing forth a branch man. Same word. It's the same word. A shebat, a root, a branch. A branch. And what it's doing is bringing what he is into the seed or into your whatever you're training.
The Message version. Leadership, verse 14. Leadership gains authority and respect when the voiceless poor are treated fairly. Verse 15. Wise discipline imparts wisdom. Is my discipline wise? Probably not. I'm being honest. Do I act out of frustration and anger sometimes when disciplined? Absolutely. I have not learned that aspect as much as I would like to. And I'm being perfectly honest, because there's nobody perfect. We understand that. We went through the whole thing with Brother Rodney. I understand that. Wise discipline, smart discipline, right discipline, right time discipline, right motive discipline, right timed discipline, the right way, and the right amount. I am guilty for over punishment. That's it, you're punished for a month. Keller's like, a month? He's just doing his homework. I'm kidding. I do that though. And I think because I'm really trying to stress the point that I mean business, that I'm going to punish you that long if you continue to do this, it's not the right way to do it. 3 weeks then. That was a joke. I'm guilty of that. Kelly deals with the kids a lot more than I do because of being home before I get home in the mornings. So she tolerates a lot more. And I tolerate a lot less. So what the boys know they can get away with mom, to this extent here, my tolerance level is about 3 steps before that. Why?
Does she give him wait till your father gets home?
Kind of. I've had to call from work at break time. How are the kids? Right. Yeah, pretty much. I'm a work in progress. I'm learning. Yeah. Wise discipline imparts wisdom. Spoiled adolescence embarrasses their parents. Verse 16, when degenerates take charge, crime runs wild, but the righteous, I like this, will eventually see their collapse. I like the scripture, but I hate that word eventually. I want to see the collapse sooner. Now. Why is it taking so long for you to have to deal with these people that are doing this stuff? Why is it taking so long? And eventually, the righteous will see their collapse.
I always remember Tim had had a pastor down in North Carolina, and he said, everybody's giving their kids a timeout. He said, I don't have time for a timeout.
We live in such a fast-paced, Brother Bud, Sister Chris has we live in such a fast-paced, I do feel the same way. I have to time manage my life so much that I do allow room for whatever. But the time that you want to give the time out, now's not the right time. We're leaving. Go to the bathroom. We're leaving. Go ahead.
Perfect segue for what I was just about to say. So I'd like to bring, I know you're talking about children, our own children, but even bringing it to the church and people who come in to the house. We're looking at probably 2 generations of people now who are so undisciplined, that have been raised without really authority or discipline in their lives. Those people are coming into the house, into the body. And we, as the people who are mature in the body, need to take those that are coming in and be mentors to them. Or let's just say, everybody knows the people, big brothers, big sisters, how they basically mentor children. Yep. That's really what we need to be to those that come into this house, so that we can teach them and show them. And what I was going to say is that whole rod, and Pastor was just saying about the branching off, and it's really branching off from what I have into what you have. That all should be used for those people. I'm not even saying any of this right and what's going on in my brain. But what you just said about time, I don't have time for a timeout. That's what we all are going to have to do, is be committed to be the people that are coming in, to be their mentors, to be their fathers, their mothers, to be able to impart what we have into them. They're not going to be able to just come in and hear this great and mighty word and walk right into it and start doing it.
Absolutely.
It's going to take time and commitment from us.
Yep.
To be everything that you're talking about.
That is the absolute truth. How many times have we heard people come walking in here, they're lost when it comes to a lot of the word. And I do feel like we as this church does well and can always do better when it comes to somebody that wants to be mentored. Friendship-wise, communication-wise, phone call-wise. Is Mark here today? I don't see him in here. Perfect example right there. Came off the street, not off the street, you know what I mean. Came in the front, came in the right door. And I said to him, one of the last ones about 2 weeks ago, and he's been here for quite a while, fitting right in to everything that God's been doing. And I said to him, I said, hey, what do you think of the Sunday schools? Because I think, because he's here for them all the time, I think he really absorbs a lot of what's being said because of different people, because I make this simple. Brother Rodney said the same thing. I'm simple. So, go ahead, Savani.
Oh, I was just going to say, branching off of everything everyone said, but I train a lot of people at work, and it's just like kids. Every single person is different, and every single person will be receptive in a different way. Now, what I find with the youngest people is they have a totally different mindset.
Yep.
That's going through them, but I had to sit back and wonder, and this goes along with what Sister Chris said, if we're just as guilty as labeling them. Like we've called them the X generation. We've told them they're this, they're irresponsible, they're that, they're this, they're that.
That's a title.
And then, you're right, it's just a title for it. But still, they're marked. They've been marked. But the truth is, that's not what the Lord says. The Lord disciplines a different way. He tells us what we are, and then he holds us accountable for being that. This is who you are in me. This is who you are, and this is how you're going to be. And so I kind of started changing the way I trained at work. And instead of saying, you can't do this, you don't do this, you won't do this, this is wrong, I said, this is what we can do, this is what is good, this is what you've done, and that's not to say that you can't, I obviously, if things are going bad, have to go back and say,
Yes.
you can't do that. But the focus is more on the positive than the negative.
Right.
And I found a total escalation in productivity because of training this way. And as it's kind of true, like I see these young people and they've been so beat up, not trained, not shown anything. And they just need somebody to love them for a minute.
Yeah.
And then once that can happen, there'll be moments where you can tell them who they are, who the Lord wants them to be. Obviously the will and the choice is theirs, but I get what you're saying, and I think even as parenting, when we constantly remind our kids who they are, who the Lord wants them to be,
Yeah.
and continually, like Brother Rodney said, line them up with the Word,
Yeah.
we'll see produce the fruit of what the Lord is after.
Yeah. I was trying to look up a word real quick, and I couldn't find it. But it really is true. I think there's a lot of, there must be room for the Holy Spirit. As busy as our schedules are, and as much as we would, time we don't have, are we sensitive enough if God whispers, I want you to talk to that person, are you willing to change your plans? Are you willing to change your schedule? Are you willing to go out of your way when it comes to being a little bit more mentoring somebody, kind of thing like that? Because it's not just going to be left up to the leadership of Christ-Life Fellowship. He's leaving it up to the whole body, which is you guys. This is an hour when God's going to start saying he's going to start using each and every one of you guys that has no title over you to move in the Spirit so that something else starts. Fair enough? All right. Yeah. Brother Buzz got it.
All right, everybody listening? Christ-Life Fellowship, you listening? What did you say last week? I think, were you last week?
Which part? I said a lot.
Nope. Here it is. The most inopportune time. There's the word of the Lord. Be prepared for it, because it's coming. And you know what? You're not going to like it.
The inconvenience part of it. You're right.
That's what you're not going to like.
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
what we're
gonna
not
go-
gonna like.
Listen to me. It's going to go contrary to your flesh. And God is changing things in the house. And the change is for growth, what he just said, the branch. Having it your way, your priorities are going to change. One way or the other. But I heard clearly last week, inopportune time. And I've been discussing it all week long with Sandra, and you know what? It came home to roost in my life. At the most inopportune times, people are going to start coming and pouring themselves out to you, and you're going to like, I don't have time for this. And God's going to check your heart to make sure that you're in his time of what he wants to do. Okay? It's not anything other than FYI. It's going to be the most inopportune time. But be prepared, because it's coming. And he's just said, the whole house.
The whole house.
And that's been the theme all along. The whole house is anointed. Every person in the place has opportunity, or God will give you opportunity to express who he is, not who you are. We're not telling them, Brother Wilson said it, we're not declaring who they are, we're not declaring who you are, we're declaring who he is. He is the great I am. There it is. because it has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with me, has everything to do with who he is. Amen? So be prepared, because it's coming.